welcome Audra and Sloan to the show. I'm so glad to have you both here.
Hi, thanks for having us.
So, Sloan, what's your favorite thing about doing a podcast with your mom?
That I just get to spend time with her.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
So if you could make an episode about anything, even something like super silly, what would you make it about?
I think I would make it about like what colors your poop can be.
You make it about what?
What colors your poop can be.
Okay, that's awesome.
We've gotten a lot of requests, and some of the things people have asked about. It seems to be kids are really interested in the grosser aspects of the human body.
That seems about right. Do you have friends at school that ask you about the podcast and about different topics that you talk about?
No, because I wasn't able to send out invitations. So,
But do you talk about it?
Yeah, sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
A lot of her friends listen. A lot of her friends listen
awesome.
to it. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I think it should be good every week for science. The first 5, 15, 20 minutes, you guys should all listen to the class. You guys have so much good information.
Yeah, today in music, we learned about the sounds of why the things vibrate in music, and we talked a little bit about the ears, and I was like, Mrs. Strouk, I already know about some of this stuff because me and my mom recorded it. And they talked about the snail and the 3 little bones, the smallest bones. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. She's talking about an episode that hasn't aired yet, but the episode about the ear.
Ooh, an upcoming one.
Yeah.
Way to give us a preview, Sloan.
Yep. Give a sneak peek, huh?
Yeah.
So what's the weirdest or funniest fact that you've learned about?
I think all of them are
You're talking about the teeth.
Weird and funny, but the most weirdest is that we have little mini living bacteria in our mouth.
So you did share with me that you talked about the ear and all the smallest bone and all that kind of stuff. But do you ever has there been any other times where you've been able to teach kids about what you've been learning?
Not really.
No. So I forgot to ask you, what is the name of your podcast and why did you pick that?
Well, it's called What's Happening Inside Me, and we picked it because a lot of kids and grown-ups, even if they're not doctors or stuff, if they want to know more about the body and what's happening inside you when blah 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 happens, so you can know about it. And if you want to grow up to be a doctor, or if you want to retire from your job that you are having, you can be a doctor and know some of the stuff.
I love that. And I think that sometimes even grown-ups, we want to know more about our bodies so we can know how to take care of our bodies. And so it's important all of your life. But I think also, when you're young, you can want to be able to take responsibility for your own body and be able to do what you need to do. And then as you get older, same thing, right? You want to make sure that you are big and strong so you can run and play tag and do all the things we like to do with our kids. And so, I think you're right. It appeals to a huge audience, whether you're 10 or you're 100. I think you can always learn something from what you have to say.
Yeah.
So what is one part of the body that you think is super cool or maybe super gross, and why?
Well, I think it's not super gross, but it's kind of gross. But when the bacteria or mouthteria poops on your teeth.
True.
Yeah. Good excuse to brush your teeth, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember when I first heard that and I was like every time I brushed my teeth, I remember being like 7 or 8, and every time I brushed my teeth, I would make sure it was smooth in the outside, smooth on the inside. Got every single one of those little bug poops.
Yeah, definitely.
So I talked a little bit about this, um, but why do you think that it's important for kids to learn about their bodies?
Um, because when if they want to grow up to be a doctor for the first their first job, they already know a little bit about the body, and even if they don't want to, they can still know about the body, and they can tell their kids about it, and then they can tell their kids and their kids and and then a lot of people can know about it.
I love
That's
that.
good.
Is there
Why should
any,
kids, before they become adults, though, why should kids know about their bodies?
yeah.
Because uh I don't really know.
That's all
Well,
right.
I think that it's important for kids to be able to be motivated to brush their teeth, for example, right? So instead of having their mom always say, "Did you brush your teeth? Are you going to brush your teeth? You need to brush your teeth," right? Or when I raise boys, so I can only speak about raising boys. But I know that like when my boys showered sometimes, I'd have to go, they go, "Okay, I'm done. Well, I'm showered. I'm ready. Let's go. Let's go do something else." And I go, "Well, did you use soap?" Right? Like, and so like I think kids when they learn about their bodies and they know about the reason why that we do those things, then moms don't have to say those things as much anymore, or dads don't have to say those things anymore because you're already taking responsibility for your own body. Would you say that that is true?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there something that you used to think was true about your body and then it turned out to be totally wrong or totally awesome?
Um
You talked about dad. You and Daddy had an idea for this one. Do you remember what you talked about? You don't remember?
no.
Hmm.
Was it
Okay.
about? I don't remember. Was it about coughing, digestive system, eating?
Oh, this is a new one. I
Okay.
didn't actually do it.
Okay.
But I think that one thing that was not totally wrong but kind of wrong was that we didn't just have things leading we didn't just have the trachea leading to our lungs. We have other stuff that it's like an upside down tree, and we have other stuff like the bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, and I didn't know that we had a lot of alveoli. What was
like
the number?
500 million.
500 million alveoli.
Wow. I did not know that either. That is a lot.
I know.
I'm trying in my head to figure if I stacked 500 million pennies, how tall would it be? Probably really tall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a
Very
lot.
tall.
I
Yeah.
know I know when you're in school and you have like the 100 days of school or whatever, and you count like the jelly beans and it like that seems like a lot. But then, you add that to all the number, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
This is why when I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but this is why I think when you get a cold or you get like something that's like infected in your chest, like it hurts so much because there's so much affected in there. Yeah.
Yeah. All that inflammation, right?
Yep.
Remember
Yeah.
bronchitis? Itis is inflammation.
Yeah. So can you tell us about a time that you remembered something in the podcast and it helped you in real life besides brushing your teeth?
Um,
Eating.
eating.
Certain things you do or don't do when you're eating.
Oh yeah. I think one of the things that helped me was eating with your mouth closed, because that's normally bad manners and it's also saving your life.
What? How's it saving your
Your
life
mouth
if you
closed.
chew with your mouth closed?
Okay. You talk when you eat.
Oh, well, talking when you have food in your mouth.
So why does that help?
Because, like, if you're talking when there's food in your mouth, you might, like, breathe, and there's a small chunk of things that go down your trachea, and that's not good.
Oh, you're right. What is it? You know what that small chunk of skin is called or no? You remember?
What'd you say?
Do you know what is that? Oh, did you say it's chunk of food that goes down your throat?
Yeah,
Oh, I thought you
yeah.
said chunk of skin. I'm like, skin? I don't know this. Tell me. Okay, that's my bad. All right. So, what is something that you've learned from your mom, not just about the body, but something else about being brave, curious, or confident?
That mistakes are okay, and, mistakes are okay, and if you make a mistake, the next time you almost make that mistake, you can remember, oh, I already made that mistake, and so now I think I'm not going to do it because something bad happened the last time I did it, you know?
Wow, that's a huge lesson. I think everybody can learn, even adults, that, sometimes it's okay to make mistakes. And then you take that and learn it as a life lesson and apply it next time. So when you try to do something else, then, you can go, okay, oh yeah, I remember what happened last time I did that. That's good. Okay. So Sloan, I'm pretty sure that you are one of the most awesomest kids I've ever had on my podcast. So thank you for sharing your curious, brilliant mind with us. Now we're going to switch gears and talk about your equally awesome mother. Okay, Audra, let's talk about how this thing came to life and why helping kids understand their health is such a game changer for families. What inspired you to start What's Happening Inside Me?
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of sort of came out of the blue. I wanted to, like, Sloan and I had talked about starting a business of some sort somehow for quite a while. And all of a sudden it just clicked that this seemed to be the right idea. I I love educating. I actually used to be a teacher, and I really miss that. I just miss the process of like helping someone else. I love like crossing them over the like chasm from like not understanding to understanding something. I just think that's a really cool process, and I really love to do that. And I've missed that. I do try to do that with my patients, but you're so unfortunately so limited on time that I can't do it as much as I would like, I think. So I just like love educating, and I miss that. And I just think it's a cool thing to do with the kids. Once her brothers get a little older, I'm sure they'll get involved too. But they get to like learn cool stuff and learn about their bodies, and also like learn a whole new thing. Like none of us, including me, knew anything about editing podcasts or, anything in this world whatsoever. So we're all learning together, which is just fun to learn new things with the kids. Um, so yeah, it's just fun, and I just think there's so many there's so many of my patients I talk to that I feel like they know so little, which is fine because that's not their job. That's my job, But I just am always amazed. I take for granted what I know, and I just want to be able to pass that on to other people. And right now, being a mom of 4 kids, like kids are the main people I talk to in my life. So I figured just keep talking to them right now.
I love that. Yeah. Okay. So why do you think it's so important for kids to understand their own bodies?
I I am always amazed at the questions my kids ask me. And so often I hear them ask a question and I'm like, oh my goodness, you have so little understanding about what's happening inside you. Like, that must be kind of a scary world to live in.
Yeah.
I can't imagine just going through life and knowing so little, which sounds so funny, but they'll ask me things and I think like my son just recently my one son just asked me a question if his one ear hole like connected to his other ear hole, and I was just thinking like that's so unsettling. You think there might be a giant hole through your entire head, like that seems crazy to me. So I just think it's really important for kids to understand their own bodies. I think it's less scary. Things like happening are less scary when you understand them. So understanding, why you're sick or why you're coughing or why you feel yucky. And then when they view something as like cool or interesting, it fills this void that could otherwise be filled with fear. So even things like when our kids have a splinter, I try really hard to like, well, let's talk about this and like let's learn about what's happening here and why it hurts, and then kind of distracting them from like the fear and scariness of it to like the interesting part, and learning about things. So and then I just think then kids are able to take some of responsibility for taking care of themselves. If they understand what's happening in their bodies, they'll better be able to just take responsibility and like make good healthy decisions.
Yeah, I love that. That is so true. So, did you notice something as a nurse practitioner or a mom that made you think, this needs to change, other than what you've already shared?
Um, I've had a lot of patients, yeah, a lot of patients that I'm like blown away at how little they understand about their bodies. I've had people not understand their own anatomy, which is insane to me, and like basics that I feel like you learn in like fifth grade.
Yeah.
And so uh, yeah, I think quite often patients will talk about a body part hurting, and it's like, oh, that's not even close to where that body part is that you're talking about. And so I just think people would better understand themselves, would better understand their symptoms, would be able to better communicate to their medical providers uh, if they did, know better what's
Yeah.
happening inside them.
Well, and I think that regardless of if you're 5 or 55, if you don't understand, there just seems to be that fear that is connected, like, what is this? Right. And so I think when our kids are young, when they're like 5 or 6, and they go to like the fire station, right? And they put on all the gear so that they can know that, if something's happening in your house and you see this big guy with all this stuff on, all equipment on, that this is really what it is. This is what the helmet does. This is what, different things. I think that is the same that what you guys are doing for health, right? So when you go to the dentist, a lot of times you go and, they clean your teeth, they give you a sticker, you get to wear the cool shades, and then you go home. But sometimes you have like cavity, right? And I know that's one of the things that you guys address, right? And so it's taking
Hmm.
away some of that fear of, okay, I can go and I can sit in the chair and I know what they're gonna do. I think that is so important. And then your podcast is so amazing because it's things that parents can learn and listen with their kids. So, the 12, 15 minutes that it takes to drive to school, you can have that going on. You can have that turned on and you guys can talk about it. And, it gives kids an opportunity during the day to kind of think about what they've learned and then come back and ask questions. And sometimes parents don't know, right? So, like, that's why we have Google, and we can like look up some of those things, or we can, talk to our doctor the next time, or, it just sparks such an incredible curiosity, the things that you're doing. And I love it so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
So, what shifts have you seen in Sloan or some of the other kids as they're learning this way?
Um, I just feel I guess like our it was really funny one time I guess it wasn't funny at all actually. Our 3-year-old like choked pretty good And it was right after our choking episode. Like, I think it was a day after it aired or something. Like, it was so soon after it. And it was a pretty significant, like, choking incident. um, and, afterwards, and he, like, settled down and, we got him all, he was okay. And he was sitting there and he was like, choking like in that episode, like he like made that connection, like getting to actually experience choking, and it was because he took like way too big of a bite and didn't chew it and tried to swallow it, and
Right?
so we were able to like talk about that. And that is he's actually not the kid, not my son that the episode was about, but my other son. And so he also struggles with this. And so it was really good to like talk about that. And he got like the real life experience of it. And then we got to you know uh he's done a much better job of like taking smaller bites. He's not like running around when he's eating, and if he does start to do that, it's much easier. I'm just like, hey bud, remember what happened that time? And he's like, oh right, and he like sits down. So it's much less of a fight. So that's definitely one that I've seen in our boys. And then definitely another one, Sloan's talked a good bit about teeth tonight, but every night she flosses and she gets her little mirror and she like looks very closely while she's flossing. And so it's not just like the routine of like, I'm sticking the string between my teeth because mom says I have to, but she's like legitimately looking with a mirror and like seeing the like plaque and tartar and stuff, like, or I guess just the plaque like scraped off her teeth, and like she like looks at it, and so she's like much more involved. I think she's a pretty good flosser, and I think part of it is because
I've already have
well,
cavities.
already had cavities, but she started doing that after the podcast. She like got the mirror out and started like looking at it after the podcast.
Well, that's great. Okay.
Yeah.
So, how do your kids typically respond to learning about things like germs, poop, or body systems that are kind of in a fun, hands-on way?
They enjoy it. They usually laugh and giggle a lot, especially with like the sound effects. That's kind of our shtick, is all the sound effects left and right.
Yep.
It's funny because sometimes I worry that they're not taking anything in, that they're just listening for the funny sounds and laughing at it. But then I'll just be super surprised because they'll blow me away with something that they did pick up from it. Even like my 3-year-old, who this podcast is like definitely over his head, but we still listen to it because he likes the sounds, and I'm always like, well, something will stick maybe. And the other day, like we were looking at some trees, and he was like, oh mom, that's like the bronchioles and trachea and alveoli. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't think you understand it in very big detail what's going on, but I don't know how many 3-year-olds on their own are going to be talking about bronchioles and alveoli. So something's sticking.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
even at like the very least, when he learns those words for the first time, in like whatever middle school or high school, they won't be totally foreign. He'll be like, at least have heard them,
Yeah, you've sparked such an incredibly insatiable curiosity in your kids about their bodies.
Yeah, that's the goal.
So, what is a favorite analogy or metaphor you've used that kids really love?
I don't know. I think I really like analogies. I feel like left and right, I'm giving analogies to try to help the kids out. I don't know that I have a favorite. I definitely think the the whole first episode was a good one with the whole like mouth-teria versus smiley girl situation in the mouth. I think that analogy was pretty good. I also really like the
Upside down tree one.
oh, that's a good
Or
analogy.
the
Yeah.
stomach.
Yeah, I was thinking of the stomach.
As a bag.
The stomach is a bag. Yeah, see, look at we got them left and right. I think I like the water park. The
Oh,
whole
yeah,
digestive tract being
that's-
like one long water park.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one too. So
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
fun.
I forget what it was called though.
Oh, the crazy splash a lot, super fun,
Crazy
fun splash a lot park.
Digestive tract splash a lot park.
Yeah, that one was hard for her to say.
The little behind the scenes, tear the curtain back a little bit.
Yeah.
So it sounds like in a lot of your episodes, you deal with some pretty complex things and systems. So how do you break it down in small chunks so that they're understandable for kids?
Yeah. Um, like very strongly believe that there isn't anything too complicated for anyone to understand. I feel that for kids and for adults, if anyone's like, oh, that's over my head, I feel like then whoever's trying to explain it is doing a bad job. It's there's nothing that someone can't understand if it's just explained the right way.
Yep.
And so for kids, that obviously means like breaking it down and simplifying it, to as much as you can. But I don't know, like, we talked about, yeah, gluconeogenesis. Like, that's a huge word. And I feel like most people would think, like, oh, that's not something a kid can understand. And I mean, we're not talking about the exact, like, biophysics of what's happening, but just like the general concept can be understood even by children. And so I just think as long as it's like broken down simple enough, we've already talked about, I really like analogies. I think they're really helpful for kids. They can, and I actually think that even the sound effects like help, because you can kind of like picture or like correlate, when you talk about like food sliding down the esophagus, that's like actually what happens. It's fancier than that. There's this whole like peristalsis thing going on, and but like basically the food is sliding down a tube, and pretty much every kid has slid down a tube slide at a park, so that's something that they can grasp and understand. Not that that's that complicated of a subject, but I just feel like analogies, taking something and just giving it as an analogy or an example to the kid's own world helps. And then I've always felt like the trick is to trick kids into learning. When I was a teacher, I taught this amazing, amazing course. It was a biomedical course, and it starts off with this, a crime scene, and there's like a chalk body on the ground, and it's like dun dun dun, like a whole whodunit thing. And we literally spend the entire year trying to, figure out who done it, or like who murdered this woman. Turns out she just had a heart attack or something. But all the kids are like, what happened? And so we take a little piece of the crime scene and we study it. So there was like vomit on the crime scene. And so we like took the vomit and we ended up, like saying like, what's in the vomit? Oh, there's proteins and there's carbohydrates and there's, this and that. And so then we like broke it down into the macromolecules. And then we spent like 3 months learning macromolecules, which is essentially what a kid learns in a regular bio class anyway. But when they think they're like learning about this like death and trying to solve the death, they don't realize they're learning exactly what you learn about when your teacher's like, all right, today we're going to learn macromolecules,
Right,
And
yeah.
so they're kind of like tricked into learning. And so I feel like that's the same thing with kids. If you like trick them into just like trying to make them interested in something or making something funny, then it's simple enough, or they're interested enough to try to figure it out and learn it.
Absolutely. And you are using all the different learning styles all at once, right? Visual and hearing, and by doing all those different pieces. And, it sticks. Like if you can learn more than one way, even if you're auditory, if you can get, all the other experiences as well, it only cements the concept even more.
Yeah.
So what are some common myths or misconceptions that you've had to undo in kids or even parents?
I don't know that I've come across any big ones. I think just that misconception that I'm too like kids are too young to understand this, or adults like, oh, I'm too, I'm in the business world, I don't understand this health, I don't understand physiology, I think that's kind of the only thing I've had to misconception is that someone can't learn it or can't understand it.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk about the mom angle. Why does empowering kids with body knowledge take some of the load off the shoulders of moms? We touched on that a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. Well, I just feel like kids are constantly told like right and left to do this and that, all the time. It's put on your shoes, get dressed, put on your underwear, go to the bathroom, eat your, wash your hands, eat your lunch, and even things that we don't think of as like constantly giving them commands. I think they just kind of start to view like they probably get to a point where everything just seems like they're being told to do something. But if if we can give the kids meaning to like why they need to do something, then they'll take ownership. So, mom is going to have to like, I don't know, bother their kids less to do stuff if the kids are taking ownership. If we teach the kids about, uh, to fully understand germs and what they are and what they can do to your body, then they're going to be much more motivated to wash their hands before they eat. So they're not like ingesting, like someone was talking about, there's like little tiny creatures. That's what germs are, basically. And you're like eating these little creatures that are going to make you sick. And so if you can like understand some of these concepts, then the kids will be motivated. And that takes the pressure off moms, not just like doing something because I said so, but a mom or dad. So this is a podcast for moms. But you're right. I love
Yeah,
that you're thinking of the dads too, because that's true.
Because we don't want to make them feel left out.
Yeah, the dads work really hard to parent kids too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not just, because I said so, the kids will be interested, and we've even had that, like, I'd say toothbrushing is probably one of the most common. Yeah, at least in our house. It's been easier, now that the kids understand what's happening, they definitely want to brush their teeth. So it's not, it's one fewer fight we have to have at bedtime to get ready for bed is the whole teeth brushing thing. So I think, and then moms can also just refer back to the podcast, so if their kid isn't maybe doing their toothbrushing, instead of having to like, out of thin air come up with this example or something as to why, even if a parent wants to try and explain why they should do something, they can just refer back to the podcast, and be like, oh, do you remember that episode? There's bacteria pooping on your teeth. Do you want to fall asleep with poop on your teeth? And
Yeah.
like, I feel like most kids' answer to that's going to be no, So it just takes the load off the mom's shoulders. You can just like refer back, be like, yeah, remember that episode? Okay, now you remember. Now you go do it,
Exactly. And you don't have to always go, it's not polite to talk with your mouth full. No, they know. The reason you don't is because you don't want to choke, and that's not fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it was really funny. When we were recording that episode, I write the scripts, and we recorded that one blind, like Sloan hadn't pre-read it or anything. And so we were recording, and Sloan's reading through the part, it's like, and that's why you don't talk with your mouth open. And Sloan hadn't read her next line, and she goes, oh, Mom, so that's why you always tell us. I thought it was just good manners. And then like literally her next line was like, oh, Mom, I thought it was just good manners. It was like exactly that. But yeah, that's like another one. Yeah, just, it's not just me telling you it's like rude to talk with your mouth full. I'm also like trying to save your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say to the mom who's overwhelmed and doesn't feel like she has time or energy to teach her kids about the human body?
I completely resonate with that, Mom. I feel like I'm overwhelmed 100% of the time. And like, I take for granted that like, it just comes naturally to me. I have this knowledge, and I have, a skill set in explaining things, with my education background. But the like nice thing is, moms don't have to be an expert on these things. That's what the podcast is for. That's my job. And so you can just put it on. I think I, intentionally made the podcast just 15, 20 minutes or so, which is about the time it takes to drive just about anywhere. When you're driving your kids to soccer, dance, or whatever, you can just put it on. It solves like 8 problems, because all of the car fiasco issues of, if you point out a cow and one kid didn't see the cow, it's so traumatic for that kid. The drama of every car ride ever. So it's, it has something to entertain the kids in like all the times they're getting toted around, and then also is educating them. So it's, a win-win. And then to the mom that's already feeling overwhelmed, like I always feel, like I want to teach my kids like all of these things. I want to expand their knowledge, and I am not an expert on many things. And so it does feel overwhelming. And sometimes I get to the point where I feel so overwhelmed if I'm trying to like help one of my kids learn to read better or something. I'm not an expert in teaching a kid to read. And so I'm like looking on Pinterest, and there's 1,000 things, and I have to still set something up and do it. And then it's so overwhelming, I just don't do anything,
Yeah.
And so this podcast, like, you just like listen to it, and then there's no prep. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. And I think you're also, inspiring that love of podcasts, right? So, if kids grow up listening to podcasts, whether, the 15, 20-minute short ones, it's like, oh, what else is out there, right? And I think
Yeah.
there's something to using that part of your brain, when you're just listening to a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, do you recommend certain routines, books, or moments that are perfect for quick anatomy or health lessons other than in the car listening to your podcasts?
I don't know that I have a ton of like solid resources. And that's part of the reason I made the podcast is because I had looked a little bit for things that would teach my kids more about like the sciences and, health and medicine. And I couldn't really find much out there. So that's why I made the podcast. So I don't know that I
Absolutely.
have a ton of resources, but the one thing I would say as far as moments that I think are really perfect is injuries. I find that that's a really great time to teach kids. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I think it's a great time when a kid is injured. And now, if they're very, very hurt, they're like really upset, they're not going to take anything in. But I find a lot of times my kids are, their tears are bigger than their injury, and so I I feel like I can distract them pretty easily. If they got like a nice little like abrasion on their knee and they're starting to bleed, once they've kind of like calmed down and, but still on the edge, I'll be like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. Let's look at this really, really closely. Like we'll get right up, or our faces like right up in that blood and be like, there's blood coming out of your body right now. That's so cool. Let's like talk about what this means, and why is your body doing that? And like, what's the next step to healing? And we're going to check this scab out. We're going to check this out tomorrow. And instead of being bright red blood, it's going to be a scab. And what does that mean? And so I just find injuries are like a great moment to try to like throw in a little anatomy or health lesson because I think it's there, it's just something right in front of you, but also it distracts the kids from their injuries. So it's another little win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like being curious about your body. Like, oh, look, I notice you have a little black thing on your, hand or, look, I think, it might be a mole or like whatever. As, it's just the day-to-day conversations and that overwhelming curiosity for your body, which I think your podcast lights the flame, and then you can kind of carry on from there, because mom's learning or dad's learning as they are listening to the podcast, and then they can go, oh well, let's branch off and let's talk about this, or let's go and do this. So absolutely. So what are some teachable, oh, we already kind of talked about that, what are some teachable moments that mom should look out for? We've talked about, so I think you and I line up on our parenting styles in that, like always, I've always been looking for teachable moments in my kids and, kind of into it. But like, what about that mom who's like, I just am tired? Like, what about teachable moments? I don't want to think about teachable moments. So how can you spot those in your everyday life and then just kind of instigate a little wisdom here or there?
Yeah. I just feel like it's so organic with the body, my husband is a history teacher, and I just feel like there's no organic way to be like, hey, let's learn about the Revolutionary War. Like it just doesn't come up in like our day to day, We're like, changing diapers and like having snacks and like going to playgrounds. Like there's nothing historical about any of that. But I just feel like the body is so, or like talking about it is so organic. That conversation just naturally comes up. It's not anything like sit down. Now I'm going to teach you about the epiglottis. It's during snack time, you notice your kid swallowing and you see, some movement here. Like, hey, put your hand here next time you swallow. Like, isn't that cool? That's your epiglottis moving.
Yeah.
So it's just, I feel like it's just uh, yeah, like a free, it's a gimme, if you want to teach your kids about the Revolutionary War, I got no tips for you. But as far as the body, I just feel like the kids are constantly doing stuff or looking at stuff, and like you said, even like noticing a freckle and be like, what's that, or why is that there? And
or, oh, look,
yeah,
you
I think
lost an
it just
eyelash.
comes
You
up
have an
on
eyelash on here. What happens when you lose an eyelash, right?
right.
Yeah, yeah. It's just
Yeah.
developing that. And I think that there's so many Christmas movies about this, right? So like as we get older, we lose that insatiable curiosity that we had as kids about everything. And so it's like it sometimes takes practice to get back in touch with that again. And just like sometimes you just have to make a conscious effort. Okay, today I'm going to find one thing that I can talk to my kiddos about, whether it's an eyelash, whether it's like, oh, look, your toenails are getting really super long. I wonder what makes your toenails grow. Or, like all those different things. You all teachable moments that are just good. And even if you don't know, I think it's important for moms to know, like, don't be intimidated, look it up, see what you got going on, or let's look it up together. It just kind of creates fun memories while you're learning.
Yeah.
So what is it like? I'm going to shift gears a little bit. What is it like to record with Sloan?
It's the best. It's so fun. She is really great at reading it, and she's always been a really good reader. So her inflection and stuff, she nails it. Stop. Um, and it's really cute. She's so honest when we read. So I write the scripts, and she reads them, and we've recently started. She doesn't like to read them ahead of time. She's like, Mom, I can just read it dry. We're good. um, and so sometimes she's reading something and she's so honest. I will have written something for her that may not be 100% true, and she always has to tell me that it's not, it's not true. So she'll read when we did the respiratory symptom or the respiratory episode. I was like, oh, we're going to talk about 2 illnesses you've probably heard of, pneumonia and bronchitis, and she like right on cue goes, oh, I've heard of those. Mom, I've never heard of those. Like she read it like perfectly with like great inflection, and then like, but she also had to clarify, like, Mom, like, I need to be honest with you, I've never heard of this. So it's really cute, like how like yeah, how sweet she is, how good she is at it.
I love that. So so you usually surprise her with an episode she doesn't really know what she's going to talk about until you sit down and have the script?
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't see this script. She'll know what episode we're going to talk about. So, because I write it and I have to edit it for a couple of days and think about how I want to explain things. So I'll tell her like what I'm working on. So I'm like, oh, we're learning about the ears. And then she'll add some questions. Like when I tell her we're going to learn about the ears, she'll add some questions like, oh, actually, Mom, what about this? Like she'll ask a question that she has and I'll try to tie it into the episode. So it's not like we sit down and write them together or anything, but she'll give me some inspiration on some like directions to go with the podcast on like things she's thought of or questioned. And so that helps. But yeah, she doesn't really see the scripts ahead of time. She just knows like the general topics.
Yeah, truly, teamwork makes the dream work. I mean, it really does sound like it
Yeah.
needs both of you, right? Sloan's input is just as important as your medical background and your adult input.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to make it relatable to kids. So I need to hear from her, what kids are wondering about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what has been your most downloaded or most loved episode that you've done so far?
The most downloaded definitely was the first one. The cavities one. And I don't know if it was because it was the first. And so that's when people start listening, that's the first one they start with. So that one's the most downloaded. But I also like, part of me wonders if I came out like too hot, because that episode is so good. I feel like I'll never be able to reach that one. It was like with the whole like analogy the whole way through, with this great like plot line for this funny like movie / comic book. And it's just, I feel like that one's so good. So a little part of me is like, oh, that one's too good. I should have started with it, because I don't think I have. I mean, when we get to the immune system, we'll have like a pretty good battle scene probably, but you can't do that with every single thing, have like such a great consistent analogy through it. So
Right.
that one was definitely a favorite.
What's the immune system?
You'll have to wait. We'll talk about that one. Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, so if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about how kids learn about their bodies in school or at home, what would that be?
Oh, I don't know if I have a good answer for that. I think that um, I just I don't know. I just think like learning things thoroughly, maybe. When you talked about what's one thing you've seen in people, I just think, uh, the things they don't understand, though I'm sure they've probably learned at some point in their life. So whatever one needs to be waived to make it interesting enough that it sticks, or to make kids interested enough to take like ownership and like learn it. There's so many things kids learn in school that they're already saying like, I'm never going to use this in real life. And I feel like health class is not, necessarily a super popular class
Right.
historically, when you're, learning some of the basic body stuff. And I think that uh, I wish something was changed, that either how it was being taught or how the kids perceived it, that it was something they realized they do need for the rest of their life, and it's not, even if like, I'm not going to be a doctor. It's like, yeah, well, even if you're going to be an accountant, you really should know what's happening inside your body. You really should.
Yep.
So I guess just, yeah, the importance of it, I guess, would be the wand I would wave.
And our bodies are so incredibly fascinating. I mean, you think about just a little tiny thing. You think about how your skin regenerates itself every 7 years, right? So, like, how does that happen, right? Like, it's just incredible. Or like you were talking about earlier, you get an abrasion on your knee and it bleeds, and your body just naturally creates this really cool band-aid over it. Like, there are just so many amazing things that I think we take for granted as an
I
adult, much
know.
less with our kids, right? Yeah.
I know. I know. I think the body is so cool. Like, I love it. I love it so much. I still love learning about it. Every time I learn something new, I'm always like so excited. It's great.
Yeah. And we go through phases, right? Like, our body is never the same. From day to day, year to year, like, my body has changed since before I had children versus now, right? And so, like, there's a lot of it's so important to know about your personal body, because it's not like, I tell people, it's not like changing spark plugs in a car where you just pull this out, put that in, it's all good to go, because everybody's is so different. I mean, we have the same basic, mechanisms. However, your body may respond differently to this stimulus or that, right? And so it's so important to know your own body. And so when you're teaching your kids the basics and they have that foundation, and then they can kind of figure out for themselves as they're adults, like, how does that pertain to me? What does it look like for me? Um, yeah, all those different pieces.
Yeah.
So what do you hope that moms take away from this episode today?
Well, like we were just talking about, the body is so cool. It's just so cool. I don't understand how anyone can't think it's amazing. I don't understand how any kid can't be totally amazed if they actually understand what we're talking about and actually understand what's happening inside them. I don't understand how they wouldn't, jump on this bandwagon with me. But I just think it's so important for kids to better understand their bodies, to make like a healthier generation in kids, and as they grow up, having a better understanding of what's going on, just they'll be less afraid. It'll make doctor's appointments and dentist appointments so much less scary. And I also think it's good. It's important for people to be knowledgeable, that so that they can, um, like kind of take the reins on their own health. When you think about like adults, when you do understand in depth what it means, like we all know like high blood pressure is bad. But like I don't know that people actually understand why high blood pressure is bad, and there's this whole thing about what's actually happening in the vessels and against the vessel walls, and like it creates eddies, and then that's what forms plaques, and it's like very interesting. And I just feel like even for adults, if they actually understood why high blood pressure is bad, not just like, oh, it leads to heart attacks and strokes, but if they knew like on the like vascular level what's happening, I think they would take better care of themselves. And so if we can start that at a young age, I think we're going to see like a healthier generation for sure.
Absolutely. And I think that there's also that piece of, you know, when your kids know what's happening in their bodies and they go to the doctor, and they're aware like of the colors and different things like that. So how amazing would it be if a 5-year-old came in and said, or 7 or 10, right? Like, I've been really sick and I've noticed that the thing when I blow my nose is green, right? Like that tells the doctor all kinds of things that they need to know, right? And then, or like it was green yesterday and I'm noticing it's a little more yellow, right? That is teaching kids not only about their body, but like advocating for themselves. These are the things that you need to tell your doctor when you go, because like I have young adult boys now and I have instilled a curiosity, but is a pain in the neck to get it like, hey, you need to make sure and mention this. You need to make sure and mention that. Like, how wonderful if they were advocates for themselves, right?
Yeah. I know. It's so funny. I always joke like my kids tell better histories than most of my adult patients do, because I tell my kids like I give them, like here's the things you need to say when you go to the doctor and I make them say it,
Mhm.
which like half of it I don't know if they know what they're saying, but I'm like these are the things you need to tell the doctor and these are the things we need to make sure that they understand and it does. You can be treated so much better when you can provide more history. When I ask a patient, like, how are you feeling? And they're like, sick. I'm like, that tells me nothing. Absolutely
Right.
nothing. I don't know what sick means. Are you like nauseated or does your nose stuffy? Like those are two totally different things.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, like having a better understanding of yourself can only be helpful.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned in the beginning, like you would love to spend a lot more time with each patient. But the reality of that is you only have so much time to spend with them. So how much easier if your patient came in and said, you know what, my stomach's been sick. These are things that are happening. And, it's less questions you have to answer. So if your kids are growing up recognizing what's wrong with their body, what's different than their body, and they come in and they're like, okay, well, this is what's happening. This is what I'm noticing, you know, it helps you be able to, as a doctor, help your patient a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm gonna put the link in the description, but where else can we find subscribe for you, share with other families what you got going on? Where are you located? Do you have a
Yeah.
do you have a YouTube? Do you have where can we find you?
Yeah. Any podcast platform other than YouTube, actually, because we don't do any videos. So, yet maybe we'll do some in the future, but no videos yet. So you can we have a Facebook page and it's What's Happening Inside Me. Our Instagram is at Emergency Medicine Mama, and that's MAMA. So at Emergency Medicine Mama, and we are working on our website, which is going to be at WHIM Podcast, WHIM for What's Happening Inside Me. So whimpodcast.com is going to be coming out this spring, hopefully.
Hey, how often do
And
your
that's
podcasts come out? Do you do one a week?
Well, so we started off with just a mini season. So we did 6 episodes was the goal, and then I added on a bonus episode, which was a guest episode on autism for Autism Awareness Month, or sorry, Autism Acceptance Month for April. And so we added on that extra episode as well. So they're going to come out once a week. This was a mini season just to kind of get things up and going, get some feedback, and kind of then start to develop it a little bit more. And we're going to start back again June 13th. So we're taking a little break.
Cool.
Yeah, we're going to do some stuff I'm going to hopefully get on the website. Questions will be able to be sent to us on the website for like the bonus episodes answering our listeners' questions. For now, you can just email. It's what's happening inside me at gmail.com. But I'm also on the website going to put like printables, coloring pages, and like vocab practice type stuff because there's a lot of big words we talk about, and the more the kids see them, the better. So there's going to be printables and different things like that available on the website, and I'm going to be working on all of that. And I can't have a job, 4 kids, make an episode once a week, and do all that. So we're taking a little break to kind of get all our ducks in a row, and we'll start back up in June.
So that gives everybody an opportunity you have all through May, it's almost May 1st already, to watch or listen to those podcasts with your kids and get ready and all excited and pumped up for June. And then the new season will start. Thank you
Yeah.
guys so much for coming. Thanks, Sloan, for lending your ear and your opinion. Always appreciated. And Audra, always, as a mom to mom, always need to know
Thanks for
everything you have to have.
having me.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Thanks for
right.
having us. This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you.